Okay, so today we're going to move into our first fivefold that we're going to unpack a little bit, and we're going to start with the apostle. Before we do that, we're going to read our Ephesians 4 passage again, which is where we're doing a lot of our teaching from. And what I want you to do when I'm reading it, and this is in your notes, I want you to underline or highlight a phrase that sticks out to you. And then I want to hear what you're seeing. What's something that like maybe that you didn't notice before, or one thing that you're really excited about? Because it's very interesting, because it's sometimes depending on which fivefold gift you are, it's what thing that's making you excited about the statement. So I'm going to read this, and as I'm reading, underline, and then I'm going to ask you guys to share which phrases are like the ones that really kind of jump off the page to you, okay? This is a very different kind of translation, but I think it's interesting to read it this way. So Ephesians, you know what? I didn't write it down, but I'll go try to figure that out for you. I'm sure if you kind of wrote those phrases in to Google, it would maybe tell you. It's very like modern English. So Ephesians 4, starting, I'm guessing, in around verse 1. I want you to get out there and walk. Better yet, run on the road God called you to travel. I don't want to see any of you sitting around on your hands. You were all called to travel on the same road and in the same direction, so stay together, both outwardly and inwardly. Everything you are and think and do is permeated with oneness. But that doesn't mean you should all look and speak and act the same. Out of generosity of Christ, each of us are given his own gift. He handed out gifts of apostles, prophet, evangelist, and pastor and teacher to train Christ's followers in skilled servant work until we're all moving rhythmically and easily with each other, efficient and graceful in response to God's Son, fully mature adults, fully developed within and without, fully alive like Christ. No prolonged infancy among us, please. We'll not tolerate babes in the woods, small children who are an easy mark for imposters. God wants us to grow up, to know the whole truth and tell it in love, like Christ in everything. He keeps us in step with each other. His very breath and blood flow through us, nourishing us so that we will grow up healthy in God, robust in love. Wow, that's a mouthful, isn't it? A lot of that to me is pretty cool. But what stood out to you guys? What phrases impacted you? Yep.
I had two words, run and efficiently.
That's awesome. Run and efficiently. Anybody else? What just stood out to you? Just shout it out.
Skilled servant work.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the babes in the wood is an often repeated phrase.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hadn't realized it was biblical.
Oh. Babes in the wood. Somebody else. Loretta.
To know the whole truth and tell it in love.
Awesome.
Moving rhythmically and easily with each other.
Yes, I love that. That's one I really like too.
My-
London?
No prolonged infancies among us, please.
Please. With a little hand.
That would have been the one that stuck out to me also. Yeah.
Stuck out to you? Anybody else? What stood out to you guys?
Grow up healthy in God.
Grow up healthy in God. Anybody else?
God wants us to grow up,
Yeah.
and to know the whole truth, and to tell it in love.
Yeah. This is probably not a like verbatim word for word like translation, but it's colorful, and it kind of gives you a little bit more understanding of looking at that scripture in a little bit different light. You know, sometimes when we know a scripture, we tend to just zone in and zone out when we're reading it because we already think we know what it means. And so it's kind of nice to hear some other way to say it. I wouldn't memorize this as complete scripture, but it is an interesting way to talk about this subject that we're talking about. One of the things that I thought was really interesting is that Ephesians was written to the church, not a leadership group. We kind of seen that. You all, we're seeing the phrases you all, that he's asking us to walk in true unity with each other. Somewhere in there he was talking about in oneness, right? In complete oneness. Another thing is he's given each one of us a gift. For the point of these gifts are for each of us to use them to cause us in differences to grow not apart but together. Very interesting that we're supposed to grow together, not grow wherever each one of us goes. We're supposed to grow together. So Jesus was actually all 5 of these 5-fold gifts, a perfect representation. And we're supposed to be like him, right? We should be growing more and more into his very image. So even though you're going to probably find one that really kind of sticks out to you and is working in you, we don't just stop there. We don't just like, oh, after we go through all these, oh, I'm a teacher. And then we just kind of hone in on teacher and we just get really good at that. And then we kind of forget the other. We're not allowed to do that. Right? We're supposed to be like Jesus, and Jesus was all 5 of them. So we need to we'll have one, but we also need to grow and mature and be able to use all 4 of them. We'll have a base calling, like our knee jerk is the way I say it. The thing you do without you even knowing you're doing it. Okay? But that does not give us an excuse not to grow in the others. So here's some fill-ins I have for your first fill-in on your paper. And I think this is a really good way to look at it. We are not all called to be teachers, but we are all called to, and here's your fill-in, share. We are not all called to be teachers, but we are called to share what we know from Scripture, each one of us. We are not all, here's the next sentence and fill-in, we are not all, the fill-in is evangelists. We're not all evangelists, but we are all called to share the good news to our world. Okay, the next one. We are not all shepherds, but we are all called to care. That's your fill-in, care. We are not all shepherds, but we are all called to care. We are not all prophets, but we are all called to, and your fill-in is listen. We are not all prophets, but we are all called to listen to God. And the last one. We are not all apostles, but we are all called to live and the fill-in is sent life. Sent life. S-E-N-T, sent life. So we are not all apostles, but we are all called to live a sent life. If we only do things that reflect our strength, then we're truly missing the point. Paul says in verse 13 that we are to move into 5-fold giftings in unity to arrive at a threshold of maturity, meaning that we should be able to eventually, at some level of ease, operate with some competency in all the 5. But we will still have our natural base calling that seems to flow out of us effortlessly. Bob, can you put that slide up? So we'll have one that's just the thing that we naturally do, that we probably don't even know we're doing. That's the way it kind of works, right? When you have a gifting, most of the time you don't even know you have that gifting, but somebody else does. Because they can see it in you because it's so common to you, you just do it effortlessly. But it doesn't mean that we're not able to shift into other things when needed. I will tell you, my fourth from the top is shepherding. But my natural thing isn't to be a warm, caring, get close to people, kind of like really, like my heart gets grieved on things. That's not what I am. But that doesn't give me an excuse not to be kind, and not to care, and not to put myself in positions where I work that muscle. Right now. There's other people in our congregation that's so natural to them. And sometimes when we have those natural gifts, we think everybody else should have that same gift. It's because it's natural to us. It's not even like something we're thinking of. We just kind of walk in it. And so we just think, well, this is Christianity. This is what Christianity looks like. We're supposed to care for everybody and bring everybody in, and we're supposed to give everybody a meal. And it's not. It's what your natural thing is that you don't even realize. And you can kind of realize it when you start reflecting that onto other people. So here's just one image that I have for you guys today. So actually, this is pretty close to probably mine, even though this is out of a book. But so you might be an apostle, like that's your main thing. And then you might have an ability to be a little bit of a teacher. Then you have your smaller ones, prophet, evangelist, shepherd. But we want to keep expanding those so that we get good at them. We're not going to, but the point is, another point besides just the fact that we should be functioning in them is that there is something mixed into this that makes us not be good at all of them. Because if we were, we wouldn't need the body.
That's right.
If all of mine were these big, huge bubbles, then I wouldn't need Sally. I wouldn't need Sally's shepherding and evangelistic heart to go tell people and bring people in. I would be limping, right? So we need each other. And that's why I think it's so important when Yahweh talks about that to not forsake the gathering together of one another. Not because that it's just some arbitrary thing where we sit in rows and we just need to be in each other's proximity. We need to be in each other's lives, and we need to be in each other's sphere because we need each other. We need each other. So he's actually made it so we do need each other, as we can see in Ephesians 4, which I believe is in your notes. So here's one of the things that we're going to kind of talk about today before we get into the apostle. And some more verses from Ephesians 4, 15 and 16. But speaking the truth in love, so think about these words, you guys. Try not to just read through them. Think about what you're saying, what we're reading. But speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in all aspects into him who is the head, even Christ, from whom the whole body, being fitted and held together by what every joint supplies. Not by what a few supply, not by what leadership supply, but what every joint supplies according to the proper working of each individual part, causing the growth of the body to build itself up. This is not the only place that we see them talking about every joint, what every person brings, right? In 1 Corinthians, it says, but now indeed there are many members, yet one body, right? In Corinthians, where it talks about all the different bodies, you're an arm, you're a foot, you're a leg. Romans, when it's talking about its gift list, it says, so we, being many, are one body and individually members of one another. So I'm hoping that we're going to, as a congregation, open up our understanding to this model of how a congregation should work and grow. And we talked about this last week, if you can remember, because in most congregations, we don't see these all five functioning, especially in the headship of the church. What two things, if you remember from last week, pop quiz, two things, the leadership of the church, the ones that are in the leadership place that are making a decision. Most of the time in a traditional congregation, so in a typical church, what are the two main giftings that you normally see is in the head person? It's two of these five. Do you remember which ones we said? Pastor and teacher. Pastor and teacher is what we see and what's been acceptable. Everything else usually is somebody that's on the outside that we might invite in to share a little thing or take us out on a evangelistic outing. But this is not how it's supposed to be. We need each one of them. Okay, let's look at another important phrase in that Ephesians 4 thing, and this is also in your notes. In verse 11, 12, and 13. And he himself gave some to be apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers. And here's the phrase I want you guys to hone in on, and we're going to talk about this. For the equipping of the saints. Okay, that phrase, equipping of the saints, for the work of the ministry, for the edifying of the body of Christ. And you can read through the rest of that. But I want to highlight this word, equipping of the saints. So when we look at that phrase, equipping of the saints, it carries the idea, this phrase in the original language, it carries the idea of creating by linking together. Hear this. I think this might be in your, okay, this is a fill-in, right? Okay. The word equipping carries the idea of creating by linking together, here's your first fill-in, disjointed parts. Disjointed parts. So that phrase, equipping, carries the idea of creating by linking together disjointed parts. It is often used in reference to the act of weaving, and here's your next fill-in, knitting torn nets. So 3 words, knitting, Knitting, like you're knitting, a torn net. Knitting torn nets. And even, here's your next phrase, setting a bone. Setting a bone. So I'm going to read that again. I know you guys are writing feverishly, so some phrases in there. But I want you to get that picture of what it means when Paul was saying for the equipping of the saints, that he gave these things, he gave all these 5 things so that the saints could be equipped. And what does that mean, equip? It means there's disjointed parts, and he's knitting together a torn net or a broken bone. Doesn't that just make sense? Like when you think about what that word means, doesn't that go, oh, yep, that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to equip us. He's trying to knit us together. He's trying to set brokenness. He's trying to connect disjointed parts. That's what that word equipping means. Okay, so before we get into the apostle, that was a little kind of review about Ephesians. We're going to play a game.
Twister.
No, Richie always wants to play Twister. Or says he wants to play Twister, but we don't
Or
let him.
lawn darts. We don't even play that anymore.
Okay.
What was the word after weaving?
Knitting torn nets. Knitting torn nets and setting a broken bone.
Setting a bone.
Setting a bone. Can you believe I've lost that again?
I don't know. Is it somewhere I can get one, or is it mixed up in that?
I don't think so. You want to hand those out. If you find the answer key, don't
give that out.
Don't give that out. Oh, I got it. I had to go home. I should have gone home twice. I left so many things at home today. Okay. This is a little game. When you guys get it, I'm only going to give you a couple minutes, so don't cheat and don't spend too much time on it.
Why does it say joke?
Okay. So these are definitions of words, what they originally meant. I want you to see if you can guess what the original definitions were of these words that you're pretty familiar with.
Why does H? Oh,
I had to
you're
change
saying-
it.
You're saying one of the words over here means a joke?
Yeah, one of the words means a joke. I had to. It didn't change when I printed it. I had to go and put it in by hand. So H is not flickering something away. It's joke. So what word used to mean joke? I'm going to just give you guys 90 seconds or less. Just real quick. It's not. You're not. I know you. There's no winning, London. No prize, no winning, except to get to say, I had the most points. I know. It's just some old. Okay. Just see if you can guess the original or an older definition of words that you probably that don't mean the same thing they used to mean.
Like gay?
Yeah, right. That's another one. Mm-hmm.
Silly.
Okay, you guys got about 10 more seconds. Just,
Oh my God.
I know.
I haven't read them all.
Just go with what you.
It's just guesses, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
There is a right answer, though.
There is a right answer. Okay, we'll see how many people have been able to do some good guessing here. Are you guys ready? I know you're probably not ready, but can't take too long on this. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. Okay. Number 1, nice. What do you think it used to mean? What?
A. I chose B.
Okay. Number 1, nice, used to mean silly, foolish, or simple. D. D. Nice used to mean D, silly, foolish, simple. 2, silly.
G.
Silly, foolish, silly.
H, joke.
2, silly used to mean B, referring to things worthy.
Where'd you get these?
Google, internet.
Check this.
Silly.
Silly used to mean referring to things worthy. Okay, 3, fizzle.
E.
Yes, quiet flatulence. Quiet flatulence. A fizzle. that kind of was like, okay, I can see that one.
Gross.
4, fathom.
Ball of yarn.
2,000.
To encircle with one's arm.
Hey, I got it.
Fathom, to encircle with one's arm.
All of them are wrong.
5, clue.
H.
H.
Joke.
A ball of yarn.
Oh my gosh.
Thought I would at least get that one.
Okay, myriad.
F.
Yep. 10,000 of an item.
What is it? What is that one?
Myriad is F, 10,000 of an item. 7, bachelor. Yes, a young knight.
I would hope I get that one.
Okay, flirt.
E.
E.
H, joke.
Oh, I got that one. Tyler, me.
And finally, hussy,
D. Housewife.
a housewife.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
I got one.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone
Yeah.
raise their
Okay, did anybody get more than 3? Raise your hand if you got more than 3.
I knew hussy just from a.
3? How about more than 4?
What?
Oh, we got 4. How about 5? Oh my goodness. How about 6? 5? Okay, is 5 the highest? That's pretty darn good because this. What's the prize? Yay! That's the prize. That's the prize. Okay, so the reason I Googled them. There's like places all over there. You can say old words that have changed meanings. Okay, the reason I wanted you guys to do this, because I want to get your brain in a place to not look at these words of what you think they mean. The words apostle, prophet, pastor, shepherd, evangelist. I want you to just take all of that, just like we've been doing with so many things at the Way. I want you to take those and I just want you to throw them off the table. Because I am gonna read things to you about what those words originally mean. Those were not, I will just say this, those 5 words were not originally biblical words. They were not originally biblical. So when Paul was using them, he had a frame of reference in his mind of what it meant in the real world. It wasn't a religious term. So I'm going to read to you what the original, I think I'm going to read to you, because I just keep, here it is. I'm going to read to you what the word apostle originally meant, where it came from, starting at about the year 400 BC. Okay? So during the time of ancient Greece, the word apostolos was a naval term. Now, I want you to think about what apostle means related to this secular word. And think about what you think now of an apostle means. It was a naval term that described an admiral, the fleet of ships that traveled with him, and the specialized crew who accompanied and assisted the admiral. So this fleet would be sent out to sea on a mission to locate territories where civilizations were non-existent. Once an uncivilized region was identified, the admiral, called the apostle, along with his specialized crew and all their cargo and belongings, which were called the apostle, would disembark, settle down, and work as a team to establish a new community. Then they would begin the process of transforming a strange land into a replica of life as they believed it should be. Their purpose was total colonization of an uncivilized territory. And within this special fleet of ships were both the personnel and the cargo required to establish a new culture, a new life, and a new community. When that fleet pulled up to shore, it contained workers trained to build roads, construct buildings, and teach uncivilized natives how to read, write, and function in a new kind of social order. Thus, the admiral became the team leader of the construction of a new society. That's what Paul was thinking when he said the word apostle. That's the word that he was pulling from his culture. A 400-year-old word. And he was like, that's what I'm saying when I say apostle. So I want you to think about that when we go through this part, the second part of the teaching today. Every time we talk about one of these, this is the model we're going to use. This is the template we're going to use each week. So we're going to start with this, and I'm going to tell you apostles and their general characteristics, okay? You guys ready? These should be in your notes. An apostolic person. Okay, before I read them, I want you to be thinking, because one of the things we learned last week is that the fivefold gifts are after the order of creation, not after the order of sanctification. Okay, so
Just write it down.
they're after the order of creation, not after the order of sanctification. What I mean by that, the gift mixes that are in Romans and Corinthians are after the order of sanctification. You have to be a believer, you have to have the Spirit in you, and those come as you walk with the Lord. The fivefold gifts, by definition in Ephesians, is or after order of creation. That means everybody in the world has this in them. One or two, and they can function in all of them, but they all have, you're born with this. This wasn't something that you just get because you're a believer. So what I want you to think of when I'm reading this to you is, what kind of job in the secular world would an apostle have? Okay, I want you to just think that way. I want us to get us out of church mindset. What would an apostle look like in the secular world? Okay, you guys ready? Apostolic. Here's some of the things that they are. They pioneer something new. Now, the difference, teachers are also called, okay, let me back up. Pioneering something new. Teachers who are called in to turn a failing school around. So they could be a teacher, but in your mind, you could be like somebody that goes into an uncharted area where there's something that's not working, and they go in and they fix it. Okay, so that they pioneer something new. They start movements. They architect systems. They start entrepreneurial business ventures. They're highly attractional, charismatic. They're always about grow, produce. They're missional. They're big picture. They're adventurous, futuristic, willing to risk, decisive, strategic, and driven. So what kind of job do you think an apostolic person would naturally be interested in? Huh? Entrepreneur?
A guy like Elon Musk.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Think about some of those guys.
Well, you have the academic researcher.
Yeah, sure.
A politician?
Can be, because it depends what their heart is. Is their heart to go in? Is their heart to go in and say, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to make a change? And they kind of get things a little messy. The politicians, that's their DNA. If that's their thing, that could be a politician. Anything else you could think of?
Bill Gates.
A lobbyist. Bill Gates. All these people that have pushed us past what we originally knew.
Jeff Bezos.
You know, I mean, you don't have to necessarily name the person, but those are good examples if you know anything about those men. Okay.
Marines.
Can be for what, and it all depends on yes, they can, depending on where their drive is.
The Marines are often expeditionary forces.
And
they're the first ones in to
Yes.
go. They hit the beach and they.
Yes. Yes.
And they set up.
Yeah, and it's just kind of what we were reading. Okay, so we're kind of going in the right direction, so that's that. Now I want to talk about what does that normally look like in the church. Okay, so we just talked about the secular world, right? So general in the church. The apostle is probably the one we scratch our head about the most. We have heard of and seen evangelists, prophets, but what does an apostle look like in the church?
Okay. Currently or ideally?
Kind of. We'll get there. At first, I'm going to tell you what currently we think of, mostly when we think of in the church. We think an apostle is a church planting missionary. That's normally, when you think of apostle, we say they're a church planting missionary. Many people have, and here's your fill-in, pigeonholed. Pigeonholed.
Pigeon what?
Pigeonholed. Put them in a hole, put them in a box, kind of pigeonholed. You can put that too, put them in a box. Many people have pigeonholed this gift. The next fill-in, apostle means sent one. So your fill-in is sent one. Apostle means sent one. Now, that make you start thinking, well, isn't that what a missionary is? Isn't that what a church planter is? So this could mean sent into the world, which we see this, and we're going to talk about Peter and Paul and the difference. Or it could be sent into the church or sent into the marketplace. Apostolic calling, this should be in your notes. Apostolic calling. Here's some fill-ins. I'll try to go slow. I don't know how much further we're going to get. My time's getting short. Okay, here's your first fill-in. Extends. E-X-T-E-N-D-S. Extends. So apostles extend Christianity as a whole onto new ground. Apostles extend Christianity as a whole onto new ground. So they think outside of the box. Now, I'm going to just give you some examples from my life because this is the one I most can relate to, and so that you know what that means. What do I mean by that? Extends Christianity as a whole onto new ground. So in the earlier days of this church, we were, my dad, who was the pastor, always wanted to we need to reach the young people. We got to figure out how to reach the young people. And so when I hear that, which you're going to find out later, apostles really love to connect with the prophetic because they know how to put feet to what the prophetic people are saying. Okay, so I didn't know that's what I was then, but my dad would say this all the time, but that's all, he would just say it, and I'm like, well, we got to do something. So we ended up creating this thing called Sight and Sound Gallery. And what we did was we transformed our church, which was in a strip mall, so it didn't look like a church, turned all the lights down, there was couches in there, and we invited young people to come and do open mic. We didn't try to do Christianity with them. We didn't try to tell them you have to only say these kinds of things. We let them come and we let them engage in whatever music, or they would do poetry. And then you know what we would do? We would make relationships and talk with them. And we would kind of connect. So we were doing something outside of the box, but for the point of advancing the kingdom. So that's kind of, it extends Christianity onto new ground. Your next two fill-ins, develops is the first one, and maintains. Develops and maintains. So people that are apostolic develop and maintain system-wide health. Okay, I also want to ask you guys, I didn't say this in the beginning, but as we go through these 5, I want you to start thinking which one, there's going to be one, I promise you, there's going to be one where you're like, dang, that's me. Oh my gosh, I never thought about it. That's totally what I think. So they used to do things in the church where we would give you a piece of paper and you would take a test and that test would tell you what you are. I don't think that's the best way to do it. I think what the best way is for you to hear these and then go, oh my gosh, I didn't know that's me. That's me. I want you to come up with it that way because I want it to be because you hear the definition and it means something to you. So apostolic people develop and maintain system-wide health. It's the practical things. They are about feedback to keep things healthy. They're always wanting feedback. So one example from my past is Kathy Jones and I started this thing called Fridays in the Flame. It was a youth kind of camp that wasn't camp. We kind of said, this is like camp but not camp. And we would spend 26 hours with young people, but not to do something fun, but to sit and worship and to go and evangelize, okay? And so we did this for every couple months for years. And it was just an amazing thing that touched a lot of young people. But at the end, I was adamant that we always had to have a feedback form because I wanted to hear what people were saying and what they were thinking so then we could adjust it for next time. So I'm kind of and I'm always wanting to know, what did you think? How is it? Not because I want you to tell me how good it is, because I want you to tell me so I know how to fix it. So if that means something to you, develop and maintain system-wide health. Okay, another fill-in, mobilizes. Okay, so apostolic people mobilize for broad impact. So another example from my life is that there's an organization out there that is super cool called TREAD. Tread is a dance troupe, but they're not dance troupe. They're drumming dance troupe. And I just love what they do. They come in and it's like an intercession prayer, but they do it with music and with their body and with the drum, and it moves my heart. And we're kind of a small congregation, but it was really important to me because I thought this needs to get out to more people. When we were living in Orlando, I would just push the director of the House of Prayer down there. You've got to see Tread. You've got to see them. This is like intercession, but with your body. And they came to St. Louis. We got them to come to St. Louis and came to our small church. And then we also connected with Destiny, which is a church in St. Louis for a while ago, and figured out how to collaborate with them so Tread could also be there. So it was like, it wasn't just about me trying to get our church to have this little thing. It's like, this is important and other people need to hear it. And I need to go tell people, you need to hear this and you got to get this person into your church to see them. So it's a networking for the sake of the kingdom. Then your last little one for this section, pursues. Pursues. And pursues global networks and relationships. So always looking outside, working towards engaging with other ministries. We are constantly trying to talk about with Bob too, like what are other ministries? Not so that we can like have people join us, but how can we connect with other ministries around St. Louis that are doing the same thing we are, just so that we can mobilize, so we can create connections. We're talking about that. We're talking with other ministries. So that's another way that looks like. Wonder how quick I can get. Okay. Probably not. Okay, let's do some quick New Testament examples. These should be pretty quick. So we have two New Testament examples. We have Peter and Paul. So Paul was a church planter and a missionary. Here's your fill-in. He was a pioneer. Paul was a pioneer. He was sent, and here's your another fill-in, into the world. So Paul, when after Jesus leaves the earth again, Paul goes crazy, right? He goes out into all the earth and he's like, planting churches. He was a pioneer. He was sent into the world. He was to blaze a trail for the kingdom. He went people in our Bibles, we have maps. Where did Paul go? Because Paul went all over the place planting churches. Peter, he was also apostolic, but Peter was a church supporter and builder. And here's your fill-in. He was a miner, M-I-N-E-R. He was a miner, like a digger. He was sent into the church. So Peter was sent into the world. Paul was sent into the church.
Backwards.
He was do I have it backwards?
You just said it wrong.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Paul was sent out into the world, and Peter was sent into the church. And he was sent there to show them how to stay the course and grow up into the head. Both are apostolic. Paul was a pioneer. Peter was a miner. So, apostolic slogan. We're going to get these slogans for each one of these. Apostolic slogan is onward and upward. Onward and upward. Grow forward, but also stay in step with God, what God's doing. We got to grow forward. That doesn't necessarily mean numbers. It might mean in depth, like a miner, right? Like we're going to dig down deep. That's why it wasn't hard for us, for you guys that maybe are newer in the last couple years. It wasn't hard for us to take worldview, the church, and turn it really fast and say, this is what we're going to do now. Because the way I am wired is onward and upward. The focus of an apostolic person is a viable future and expansion of the Christian movement. They're ideal people. This is in your notes. Core question an apostolic person asks when making a decision. So when decisions have to be made in the church and it's an apostolic person that their main thing is apostolic, will this help increase our capability for mission? Will this help increase our capability for mission? Meaning work. Like, will this increase our ability of work? The movement of God. Will this increase our capability for mission? Always in an apostolic's mind. I remember, and some of you are going to think, why'd you say that, Stacy? So when Worldview was smaller, we had a congregation that was like deep in South City. And we had some doozy of people that needed God's love. I mean, we had people that, I just can't even like explain, but just think deep in South City, we had some women that were like, pregnant, but then their other baby was from another kid, but they don't have another man, but then they don't have a job. And I was in the birthing room with one of them. And it was just like messy. And all of them had different relationships. And we were just like, oh my gosh, we're just trying to figure out how to keep our head above water and help these people, because they were like people with real problems, not South County problems, South City problems. And I was a part of a homeschool co-op. And I was new, and I went in there, and we were talking about their church and our church, and they were like, so I was like, we have a women's meeting coming up, and I'm thinking of our women. I'm thinking of like what we have to do. We got to get them clothes, we got to get them fed, and they're like, yeah, we have a women's meeting. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. They like, do you want to come? And I'm like, I guess. I'm like, yes, tell me about it. They're like, we exchange recipes, and I was like, you do what? There's a world out here dying, and I have these people, and all you're worried about is exchanging recipes? For some people, that might seem, that's awesome, you're building relationship. And I'm like, no, I got to spend my time over here with these people that are dying. Literally, like they're in situations where they're in neighborhoods where they walk out the door, they could die. And I'm like, we're worrying about who has the best recipe? It blew my mind. So that's kind of what it's like they are always about, does a women's group increase the ability to follow what God's doing? That's what an apostolic person. Let me see if there's a place I can stop. Okay. I'll do 2 more fill-ins and then we'll stop. Apostles are the catalyst. Catalalysts. Apostles are the catalyst. They bring spiritual insight, structure, and the plan to get somewhere. And the last one we'll do today, apostolic people make change. Change. Not money change, but I was waiting for you to say that, Richard.
I was going to.
Yeah. Okay, now I do want to say before we stop there, I just told you all the good flowery stuff, or the positive things about apostles. We haven't gotten to the other side of like their weaknesses. So it's not like I'm elevating apostles, like look how cool they are. But this is the part they bring to the body. This is the positive things that they bring. Can you already, before we even start going into it next time, can you already see problems with this apostle? You don't have to shake your head so fast, Greg. Greg and Kathy are like, yes, Stacy, I know her very well. Yes. Okay, good. But you can. No. Can you already, but all the things I said, and I'm saying them so positive, but can you see if that person's left by themselves to run an organization or a congregation, how messed up they would be? Huh?
They're always gone. They're always over there.
And they're always pushing people to do what's on their heart. It's like, seriously, I'll just say one thing I've learned about myself. Slow down.
Can I say something?
Yes.
I think the bigger problem would be not that they're like go-getters, but when you are trying to fulfill God's plan, and they are the person that wants to make up let's do this, let's do that, let's do this. They need focus. They need to be vice presidents.
Yes.
Not presidents. And as far as biblically speaking.
And yes. And they do need, I can think of somebody right now that's not myself also that is very apostolic, like a lot more mature than I am, a lot more impact in the city and in the nation. And I'm constantly looking at him and I'm thinking, whoa, you need people around you to slow you down and to put you, because what you're doing is so amazing, but you don't have any, like, you're just flitting over here and then you're flitting over here and nobody's like keeping you in line saying and slowing you down and like keeping everybody on the same page with you. You're just like going so fast all over the world. And so there's a problem. That's why God said we need to have all of these working in a congregation so that we can grow up in the head and be mature and walk together.
In the secular world, you'll see that you hear them as called okay Karens.
Okay, Karen.
Yeah, because they're the ones that are always meddling, if you will, in things and stuff like that.
And they can't. And here's the same thing. There's levels of maturity. Like there's people that are apostolic like that, and they can't even be in a conversation with you because they're onto something else. And then you can grow in maturity. One, you're also going to be like softening yourself up with some of these other ones, and also learning, hey, I got to know the negative thing about me, Stacy, is that I got to slow down. I have to I can't turn the ship so fast. I have all these great ideas, and it's terrible when it's just me and Rich in a room because he's prophetic and he has the big, and I'm like, okay, what you said, I'm going to make it happen. It's like, left alone, we would be out of control. We really need shepherds to love people. We need teachers to show us exactly what is it that we're trying to do? We need that evangelistic thing that we're going to talk about that's a different word than you think, but it's about people joining, making people feel like they're the greatest cheerleaders. They're the greatest, I'll already tell you, the greatest salesman, but in a positive way, somebody that knows how to say the thing to get people excited. We got to have all of that. So we are going to, next time we'll finish up Apostle, then we'll start working on the next one. But just wanted to be true to we got here done about 46 minutes, so.